Today, we have a truly exceptional guest whose storytelling magic has resonated deeply with readers of all ages. This author has taken us on incredible journeys through the lives of unforgettable characters, the rich, complex worlds inspired by history and imagination. Her work includes the Newbery Medal winning Dicey's Song and the Newbery Honor book, A Solitary Blue. With these and many other stories, she has earned some of the highest accolades in literature, including the ALA Margaret A. Award for her exceptional contributions to young adult fiction. She's a true legend in the world of books, and I'm honored to introduce the one and only Cynthia Voigt.
So, having ruled out the word legend, thank you. That's a nice introduction.
You're welcome. Your books have touched on various important themes like adventure, mystery, racism, and child abuse. Can you share with us what inspired you during your childhood, and were there any authors who influenced your journey into writing?
Okay. One, I was a reader. I read constantly and anything I could get my hands on. I couldn't get my hands on that much in those dear old dead days of the 40s and early 50s when the market was not saturated with books for kids. There was a lot of reading that happened in school, reading of books and stories, study of poetry. So I developed a taste for stories. I love stories. Hearing them, telling, I like people's stories, books stories, the whole thing, and language, what language can do. I developed a taste for that through my reading and through my education. That was the first thing. The other reason I write is kind of curiosity and a kind of arrogance. I bet I can do this. When I was in ninth grade and wrote something in response to a poem, a long poem, in response to a class assignment, and it did very well. And it got published in the newspaper, and my parents were proud of me, and my sisters were jealous of me, and a boy I had my eye on was interested in what I was saying. So I thought, this is great. If you're a writer, everybody envies you, and people you want to have pay attention to you, they pay attention to you. So that was what made me decide I thought I would like to try it. Then, influencing me, I had books I read, like Nancy Drew, who could operate pretty independently. She had a red roadster. She had a tame father. She had everything going for her. And there was William Shakespeare, who can do such wonderful things with words and characters and stories that just come alive in my imagination, in my memory, and on the stage. So I like to think those are my influences.
In the Tillerman Cycle book series, particularly Homecoming and Dicey's Song, has left a lasting impact on readers. What was your inspiration behind the Tillerman family, and how did you craft such deeply emotional and relatable characters?
The reason I wrote the story was a what-if question, which is where a lot of stories begin. And that becomes kind of the seed that gets planted. Something happens that catches your mind. Your mind says, what if? And the seed grows, if you're lucky. The seed for that one was, I was in the parking lot for a supermarket, as I was every Friday afternoon doing my weekly shopping. And the car next to me was an old station wagon, and there were 4 kids in it with no parent. And as somebody who never left her kids alone in the car because they were so wonderful, somebody would want to take them, I noticed this. And then I thought, for some reason, I don't know why, I thought as I went through the doors, I thought, what if nobody comes back to find them? And then when I hit the tomatoes, I had realized that this was a really good idea for a story. So I sat down to write it. The book I originally outlined stopped about halfway through where Homecoming is. Okay? And this is the character part of the question. I invented people who were going to do what I needed them to do. You have to make fact decisions. How many people are there? What are their genders? What are their ages? If they're siblings, what do they have in common? How are they different? Those are just facts. What happens after the facts is mysterious. I have no idea how you get to hear the voices of your characters and see how they move. But somehow, by trying to write them and by rewriting those opening scenes and thinking about them, they begin to flesh out. So I was writing along to this story that's half as long as Stopped in Bridgeport. And I was writing along, and then suddenly, literally, unless you have a typewriter, you won't know what I mean, but a typewriter has a carriage, a round carriage. Out of my typewriter, a character leapt up at me and announced that she wanted to be included, so to speak. But she just leapt out at me, the grandmother did, and she was absolutely right for the story. I don't know where she came from. She was not in my original plan, but she doubled the length of the book. So by then I had a very long book. In fact, they took 200 pages out for when the first time in the publication of it. And I got to the end of it, and I realized that the story wasn't finished. Put out a book that long with three long parts in it. So I said to the publisher who published the first one, "Do you mind if I have another story to tell?" And they said no. So the third book, or the second book, is just like a continuation of the first because it wasn't finished. And as I was writing the second book, I ran into a character who really interested me. And he became the third book. And then there was one of my favorite characters, situations, and product of the fact that when I was a young woman beginning to teach, the Vietnam War stuff was going on. And as everybody today knows, wars present problems for anybody who thinks. It's the rights and wrongs of any of them. But they're just sad in how much they cost the world and people. And so the fourth book is my attempt to try to swallow that. Then they just kept reappearing until the end. So they're all outgrowths of how the characters get written. It's mysterious to me.
You just do it on the spot?
They just appear, and I know when they're being true to themselves. And if I listen to myself, which I try to do, I won't try to make them be false to themselves. But it's not like, I don't know. It's mysterious. I feel the nearest thing to it is if you play sports. Sometimes you just do things right. You can't always do them right, but sometimes things just in your body, in the situation, they just play out right, and you're in the zone. That's what they say, and that's mysterious. You have to earn the right to be there, and you can't get there just because you want to. But sometimes you're there.
In today's world, we're seeing a rise in book bans, especially in young adult literature. Have any of your books faced bans or challenges, and what are your thoughts on this increasing trend of censorship?
I have no idea if any of my books have been banned or faced it. That's not the kind of information I track. My feeling about censorship, basically I don't like it. But I was thinking about it because sometimes it seems to me it's appropriate. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking that really censorship comes up because adults want to censor what's available to children. When people start censoring adults get very testy, and they don't like it. If they start trying to censor gun ownership, censor what you can say in public, censor possibly what you think, it's people with a taste for independence really don't like it. Okay, so it comes down to a matter of power. And in the case of censorship of YA books, the kids don't have the power. I'm not sure I know how I feel about that there's something wrong with the power differential like that. On the other hand, it's a lot of individual cases. If the kids want to censor things, I don't read books I don't like. School's job is to show me books that I might like. School does its job. I run into a wider variety of books. I find more books that I might find more books I don't like, but I'm choosing for myself. If I had to censor books, I'd censor books that treat students as stupid because they can't understand complicated characters, because they can't understand difficult ideas, because maybe something might scare them, as if kids were unaware of what the world is like and that it can be scary. And YA, young adults especially, because it is about power and control.
Your Kingdom series takes a departure from contemporary settings and delves into a medieval-inspired world. What motivated you to explore this unique genre, and how did you balance realism with the mystic elements in these stories?
I'm a big fan of the masked Avenger, like Zorro. Zorro is a legendary character out of California, and he's a rich guy, but he feels for the poor. And there are wrongs being done by the people in power to the poor. They are being abused, et cetera, and he puts on a mask and a cape and a wide-brimmed black hat and has a sword. And he goes around avenging the wrongs that are being done, freeing the captives, stealing money back like Robin Hood from the rich, donating it to the poor. And whenever he does something like that, he takes his sword and he slashes a Z. What if it was the costume that carried the power and different individuals occupied the costume? What did that mean about the good deeds themselves? And what happened to the individual who wore the costume? And that interested me. So I took that and I matched it up with my curiosity, arrogance thing, because I love the way in Lord of the Rings, Tolkien creates an entire universe. I'm not interested in problems that people face that are solved by magic or dragons or super skills. It's human beings dealing with human life that interest me. And then it was 9/11, and there was a man who apparently made his way out of the towers when they were burning, but went back in to rescue people and was lost. And I thought, that's the thing. The hero of the story sometimes dies. If you do the heroic thing, sometimes you die. Yikes. That's not the way the stories are told. The stories are told like Star Wars. At the end, everybody's cheering and you have medals. So I wrote a book that was that idea in it. And then I went to Denmark, where they had a Viking museum and information about Viking funerals of early days. And apparently during those funerals, there was the king who died was burned, and burned with him, not because she wanted to be there, was some girl. So I started a book there. And that's where they all come from.
As a seasoned author with numerous awards and accolades, what advice would you give to aspiring writers, particularly those looking to write something for young adults in such a dynamic and sometimes challenging literary landscape?
I think difficult and challenging is a euphemism for the YA market. Do what you want to do and hope for the best. Don't take it too personally if it doesn't. Maybe you're not a good writer. Maybe you didn't tell the story well enough. Maybe it's not a good story. Maybe it's just that it had failed to find the one person in a publishing house who would have found it interesting. Do you know the Twilight series? Apparently it is an extended vampire love story. It was made into movies. It was extremely popular.
Oh, I remember it now. I remember my friend was actually telling me about it the other day.
Okay, and were they speaking enthusiastically?
She enjoyed the book.
Yes, so here's what. I happen to know that book was sent into an agency, right? And nobody liked it except for one of their readers. And the agents who didn't like it knew it would not go in the market, said, okay, you can, see if you can sell that. And it made this unknown, this reader who was like a secretary, right? I mean, it's an underling in the agent in a literary agency's hierarchy, made her a fortune because she was the only one among a bunch of professionals who liked it. But it only takes one. So how do you know? How do you know? When I first submitted Homecoming as a manuscript, because I was tired of being rejected one at a time and waiting for months to be rejected, I took the first 2 chapters and just sent them around to 5 publishers or an agent that I respected. 4 of those people didn't want it at all. 1 did, but that's all it took. So my first thing I would say is, if it's what you want to do it. Don't, if you do it for making money, I guess you go about it. You look at the writing world in a certain way. Look at what's popular. Look at what people like. If you do it because you have something you really want to say, do it. Just you have to do it. You can't say you want to do it. You have to actually do it and find out. And you'll feel better for having done it, even if nothing good happens. Remember that there are more than one way to earn a living with writing than writing and publishing books. If you like language and like making language, there are other ways you can do it. You don't have to be successful in this angle. I'd remind people of that. And then I would say, please fall on your own face, not on anybody else's. And that would be the extent of my good advice.
As we wrap up this special interview, we want to thank Cynthia Voigt for sharing her journey, her inspirations, and her thoughts on the craft of storytelling. From all of us here at Unbanked Police, Cynthia, thank you for continuing to inspire us with all your incredible stories.
That was good. Thank you very much.